It's time to get nerdy, y'all.
A little bit of gaming history for you.
Something relevant in gaming and discuss our opinions on it.
Should we kick it out of here, or should we kickstart it?
This is the part where you, the listeners, try to stump the hosts.
I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on a podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Tuesday, August 15th, 2023, and you know what that means. It's time to get nerdy, y'all. Welcome to episode number 278 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest award-nominated video game podcast in the galaxy. I am Lam, also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and I'm joined by my comrade in gaming commentary, my fellow red shirt wearing, Marvel Comics loving, video game playing, the Miggity Mac, also known as Mac Shin. Mac, we wore the same color shirt today. Was this planned?
No, as with most things in this show, it's rarely, if ever, planned.
It's all improvised, everybody. It's all off the top of the dome. Well, how are you doing, Mac?
Doing pretty darn well. It's been a lovely week. Unfortunately, there is a fire nearby. Not that we're in any danger, but it's getting smoky. So, and not in the good way that I like with the ribs and the cheese at your house.
Sure.
It's smoky in a not fun way, but I can't complain too much. There's definitely lots of people who have it worse, so I should probably shut up now.
No worries, man. I hope that you don't breathe in too much of that smoke. That is not the barbecue variety. Well, things are good here in the Nice Guy household. We had multiple, this is going to sound very bougie. We had multiple pool parties last week.
Oh no, the horror.
Right, I know. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying we did. And so my neighborhood does one every year, and it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went there, the kids swam, and then we walked the kids home, went back and hung out with the adults and just had a good time. Lots of good food. I don't drink, but if that's your thing, there's a lot of adult beverages there. And lots of snacks and just good company with the neighbors. So I live in an awesome neighborhood, and I love it. And then Saturday, similar thing, with some church folk, barbecue, and a pool thing. So lots of swimming, lots of water slides, enjoying summer before, Wisconsin, Mac. The snow's coming. I can already feel the flurries. It's just a couple months away. So, and then gaming, man. Just gaming, but I won't get too much into that. We talk about that later.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mac, I've got to ask you. So we're nominated for a podcast award again this year. If we're blessed enough to win, it's a three-peat. We've won Games and Hobbies 3 years in a row. What do we do? What do we do to celebrate if we win?
You're really putting me on the spot. The thing that comes to mind is another live show someplace.
Another live show? Maybe some In-N-Out burgers. We're very simple people, for those of you who may be listening for the
Yeah.
And maybe we each splurge and get a Steam game, right? I think we keep it simple like that.
Yeah, something like that. We both get a burger, get a game, and then whether we're in the same room or whether we're apart, we're just, we do it at the same time. We synchronize our celebratory.
Synchronize. Well, on that note, Mac, I say we do what we do best and hop right up in this gaming news, my friend. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Lam, I've been out of the loop. What is going on in video gaming? Help me.
So much for episode 278. And if you're here for the first time, we appreciate you live or after the fact. Mac, this first news story comes from Kotaku. Fall down a retro rabbit hole with every Mega Man game ever. They're heavily discounted on PS5 and Steam. Decades since its debut, no side-scrolling action platformer hits quite like Mega Man. Maybe that's why they made so many sequels and spin-offs. And by the way, this is by Ethan Gack at Kotaku. And currently, you can grab them all, including every Mega Man X and Mega Man Zero game for just blank dollars on Steam in Capcom's current end-of-summer sale. Now, Mac, I want to quiz you before I actually say the dollar amount. If you were to guess how much it would cost for every Mega Man game ever to be bundled together digitally. And now, mind you, that's Mega Man's 1 through 8. That's 9, 10, and 11 that came out later, right? That's Mega Man X. That's, what am I forgetting? Mega Man ZX. It's all the legacy collections of Mega Man. What do you think that costs?
That my guess is to buy them at list price. I'm going to say $175.
Oh, okay, but we want the discounted.
The discount price, I'm going to say $35.
Oh, so close. If this is Price is Right, you would have been over. But this isn't the Price is Right. This is Two Nerds in a Pod. And so you're very close. The answer is actually $30, which I think is extremely reasonable. Now, my question for you is, as someone who has probably played these games over and over and over and over again, maybe even owns several of them physically, but also understands how awesome of games they are, emulation or the Legacy Collection?
Actually, it depends, because the first Legacy Collection was done by Digital Eclipse and is particularly good. Difficult, but particularly good.
Okay.
The second Legacy Collection...
Some extra goodies in there.
Yeah. A lot of extra goodies in there. The second Legacy Collection was not done by Digital Eclipse, was done by, Capcom or somebody that they contracted out, and it doesn't quite have the same fidelity, if you will. A matter of fact, there's, I don't think anybody does speed running on the Legacy Collection because of slowdown or issues that are present there that weren't present in the original.
Sure.
So that make it a deal.
Mac dropping knowledge.
With respect to the ZX Collection, I've played that, and that's pretty good. But for the most part, I'd say emulation's a pretty good call on most of them. And in some cases, again, we are just talking some cases, the emulation is going to wind up being a little bit better than the collection itself, but only in a very technical aspect and in a way that most people will never, have any issue with. So I think it depends on who you are and what you want.
Yeah, these are dope games, let's be honest.
Oh, absolutely.
I can't imagine there's too many people out there who want this whole bundle that don't already own a bunch of these in multiple formats. It's kind of like when Nintendo sells the Mario Brothers games.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, you could have it on your 3DS. You could have it on your Wii. You could have... Okay, that's great. But, we also have them physically, and there's ROMs out there that people can play legally because they own physical copies. So... I don't know. If this is a game that you're really into, the Mega Man games, absolutely buy them if you don't have them. But if you already have them somewhere else, I don't know if this is worth a rebuy. Just my opinion. Great deal.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, moving on to the next news story. Mac, we've heard about strike systems. We've heard about ways of trying to curb bad behavior online. Xbox has launched a new strike system to help weed out the jerks. This is by Eddie Macick on GameSpot.com. Microsoft's ongoing effort to curtail bad behavior to help promote an environment free of harassment and bullying on Xbox continues with the announcement of a strike system. This comes not long after Microsoft rolled out an Xbox feature that allows players to capture and submit chat clips to help fight toxic behavior in online games. I want to stop there for just a minute, because Mac, you're not a lawyer, but you do play one on a podcast. And my understanding from having taken some political science classes, some legal classes, even some masters in public administration classes, is that you can't record someone without their permission. Now, there's exceptions, which are if they're in a public place, people don't have a right to privacy in their car, walking down the street. But don't you think that would apply here, or am I off? The idea of recording people's chat and clips to help fight toxic behavior.
That's interesting. Now, I suspect that obviously Microsoft's lawyers are way cleverer than me.
Debatable.
You're too kind. I suspect that somewhere inside of the terms and service, there is a essentially clause that says, hey, you are not to expect privacy while using our stuff. As a matter of fact, you wind up seeing it in your school or your workplace. They probably have a thing that you have to click agree to every time you log in. That's just like, hey, whatever you do here is you can expect no privacy. We have utter say on this, and I'm pretty sure that Xbox, Microsoft has that as well, and it's probably to the point that it's on all of the platforms like that. I know that several of them have it, And all that is to say that you have probably surrendered your right to object. And even if you feel like it's a bit much, you also surrendered your right to sue and agreed to do arbitration through whomever they assign as arbitration and in the venue that they picked, and yada, 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 yada. But the point being is that, yeah, under normal circumstances, 100% right, you would probably object, and rightly so, to something like this. But
Okay, fair enough.
there you go. And Ishmael, you're probably right. We probably did sell our firstborn child too, just for good measure.
Love it. Well, here's what the system entails. It says, the Xbox Strike system is similar to the demerit system used on a driver's license in many countries. A player that has received 2 strikes will be suspended from the platform for 1 day, whereas a player that receives 4 strikes will be suspended for 7 days, Microsoft said. There's a total of 8 strikes. Once that number's reached, players will be suspended from messaging parties, party chat, multiplayer, and other features for 12 months. Strikes against accounts will be retained on a player's record for 6 months before being wiped. Mac, here's what you get strikes for. Players will receive 1 strike for profanity and cheating, 2 strikes for sexually inappropriate and harassment/bullying. Anyone using hate speech will receive 3 strikes. I think it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess a lot of games have profanity in them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, what is profanity? Is it messaging someone, saying beep you and your mom and your dog and your sister? Or is it just someone getting frustrated in a game? Or is it someone who's in a lobby and they're in a party, but the party chat is open and they're cursing? I'm not saying I'm an advocate for using bad language. I'm just saying, can people not curse using M-rated games now while playing M-rated games?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's wild. Just my opinion. What do you think about these types of demerit systems that kind of encourage players to report others? I have some opinions, but what are your thoughts?
So we have a problem in video gaming generally of harassment. It's been a problem for quite some time. And I don't know as anything that I've seen yet has been especially good at, curbing it so much. This seems like I don't know if novel is necessarily the right term, but it definitely seems like an interesting approach that I don't believe has been tried in video games before, and I feel like maybe it could do something. I do have a certain feeling about these things because very often we see that a system that is presumably designed to do something like this can often be used, the shield can often be turned into a sword. You can falsely report people
Exactly.
for things, and it doesn't take too long for you and 5 of your buddies to report somebody for something, and there's your 4 or 5 strikes in one go, and now we've booted you for a day.
I would hope that they're doing some due diligence when these things are reported.
I would hope so.
But do they have the time and resources?
That's the one, Lom. Yes, 100%. It's like, if you don't have the resources to moderate this, if you don't have those resources, then how do you have the resources to moderate the moderation? Outsourcing the moderation to another, crowdsourcing the moderation is one thing, but I find myself skeptical that they've got enough content moderation to look at it on the back end anyway.
They've got to be working on these first-party games. They don't have time to be moderating profanity. Come on. So, no, I'm with you. I guess the other thing, and I'll put a pin in it with this, is people have different expectations of what they're going to see and what they're going to hear on the internet. And, with the exception of things that are objectively bad, like, who am I to put my expectations on other people? I don't let my kids talk online unless it's just with their friends over on their phones while they're gaming, simply for that reason, is I can't control other people's behavior. So I like that they're trying to eliminate hate speech and bullying. I think it's a great idea. It'll be interesting to see how this system works out. Well, I'll leave it at that. How much money are they willing to put in the system? That's a good question, Ishmael. Now, I do want to say, speaking of the Kinect, there was a time, Mac, where in NBA 2K, and I just Googled this to make sure I wasn't misremembering, you could get a technical foul for cursing. In real life, if you cursed while you were playing the game and you had your microphone hooked up, it would give you a technical foul. So they're always listening, y'all. They're always listening. That was in 2015. Well, I think we have time for one or two more news stories. I want to give a shout out to an indie RPG that just came out called Hammerwatch 2. It's part Link to the Past, part Diablo 4, and I played it during Steam Next Fest, and I had a really, really good time. You like those dungeon crawlery Diablo 4 exploration type of games. It also does have co-op. You may want to check that out. Looks like it's not getting that good of ratings so far, but I really had fun with it. So check it out. Check out the demo if it's still there. And then, Mac, for the last news story, we're going to talk Destiny 2 just quickly. Kotaku by Ethan Gach. Here is what he had to say. The Destiny 2 community has been spiraling ever since a disappointing State of the Game update earlier this month failed to address what some fans see as core issues with the modern version of Bungie's sci-fi MMO. Now, game director Joe Blackburn has taken the unusual step of addressing the community directly in a new video that promises a free Eververse armor set in Season 22 and a free PvP map pack for Crucible in 2024. Quote, a few weeks ago we put out a State of the Game communication that wasn't up to our standards and what y'all have come to expect for those kinds of communications, Blackburn said in an August 15th video recorded at his home office work desk. It didn't provide the high-level vision we normally provide, and really and truly a bunch of us were heads down working on the final shape and weren't able to give it the sort of care we usually put into these sorts of communications. Mac, I want to give you some context. Destiny 2 came out in 2017. It's a game as service. The game is free in the base form, and there's been some of the DLC that's been made very, very cheap and free as well. 6 years into the lifespan, how long can we expect developers to continue to support a game? A game live as service? Whatever. Game as service, multiplayer, single player with content. Like, how long should they feel this obligation to appease an angry community?
Appease an angry community.
I ask the tough questions here, man.
Yeah, no.
Softballs.
I get what you're saying. And I mean, ideally, the support would be functionally eternal. The ability for us to play a game would be permanent, would be non-fleeting. But the way that we've structured things, I think it is not only unrealistic, but I think unworkable to ask that. So, I don't know. I feel like first-party support, bare minimum 5 years. Real talk, though. I would love for developers to bake into their original sales of the game, their terms and service. I would love for them to bake in an expectation for, hey, we promise to support this for X number of years, so that we knew from the get-go, like when we were buying it, how long we would get to keep it.
Yeah. I think it'd be great. I think we know it's not realistic, but it would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't know how many copies are going to sell and how much interest there's going to be. But I think you're right. Like, with a game like this, it's Bungie. They have the budget. They know there's going to be an audience, or at least they suspect strongly that there will be. So it'd be cool for them to say, hey, 5 years, and then Destiny 3, or 5 years, and then we're done. No promises on what we're doing. So
yeah. And for those of us who are the angry, public, or the angry fans, we would know, like I would know, hey, if I know Destiny 2 is only going to be really well supported for 5 years, that gives me an opportunity to be like, you know what? I would try Destiny 2, but, oh wait, I've only got 3 more years left on the shot clock. Why don't I pull the trigger on that now? And I think... unrealistic, it's probably never going to happen, but I can see a lot of ways in which it would improve these types of conversations about support and how long support should happen, is all I'm saying.
I wish that I had the attention span and that I was at the stage of life to get into a game like Destiny 2 or World of Warcraft, with my friends, and like my friends all love it, and we love it, and we play together, and we all have the time, and to do that, I just can't get into it. So I empathize with these communities who put hundreds and hundreds of hours into these games and level up your characters and do all the quests and the dailies and get the best gear. But you've got to understand, Bungie doesn't owe you anything. Blizzard doesn't owe you anything. At some point, the state of the game isn't going to be what you want. And there's so many good games out there that will scratch that itch. So I'd encourage you to go find them. Mac, that has been our news for the week.
All right. Well, now that we've looked at what's going on around us right now, let's take a little look into the past with some video game history. So a lot of really cool things have come out this last week in years before. I think a couple of really good fan projects, such as back in 2016, the release of another Metroid 2 remake. That came out before they announced that they were going to be redoing Metroid 2 for the, I believe it was for the Switch and 3DS.
Yep.
For 3DS, okay. And then of course, I think maybe a month after it came out, it got DMCA'd, so you had to have gotten your hands on it real fast there before that. But another Metroid 2 remake, amazing. Another real cool thing happened back in 2012. Zelda 3 parallel remodel. One of the best ROM hacks. Really, really good. Definitely one to download and try. But there's so much big stuff going on. We don't have time for that. Back in 1995, the release of Chrono Trigger on the Super Nintendo. Which, as I recall, obviously Chrono Trigger, fantastic game, multiple endings, lots of different characters, synergies between the characters, but I don't recollect if there was a New Game Plus option before Chrono Trigger came out. I believe it's
was a good...
Or New Game Plus, if that was a thing before Chrono Trigger.
That's tough. What are we considering a New Game Plus? Because, you could play through Mario 1, and then when you beat Mario 1, you could play through it again, and there'd be Beetles instead of Goombas. So, on a low level, I don't know if you're considering that a New Game Plus.
That's a really good question.
But there was no save file involved.
Yeah.
So on that level, I think you may be right.
Yeah, I think the New Game Plus I'd call, you would play the game back from the beginning in the story, but with, of course, harder enemies. So I think that definitely counts for the original Super Mario Bros. But with the power-ups and the stuff that you would gain from your first playthrough, or equipment, or what have you. And I think that's where I would put what I considered to be New Game Plus on it. But nonetheless, I think that's a very good point. Depending on how fine we slice that pie, Super Mario 1 might do it. It is interesting, though, that you would mention Super Mario Bros. 1, because one other little thing happened this last week in 2021. That's when we saw that Super Mario Bros. 1 copy sell for $2 million at auction.
Wow.
And you know what? Maybe we put a pin in that one, because I'll be coming back to that later on in this show. But the piece de la résistance for this week is in 1999, the release for the PlayStation 1 of Soul Reaver: Legacy of Kain. One of my favorites, not just of the series, but on the platform itself. A lovely game written by Amy Hennig, who just knocked it out of the darn park. Mr. Nice Guy, I don't know if Soul Reaver was one of yours or not.
It's not. PlayStation 1 is one of the consoles that was neglected in my gaming history.
Hey, if I had a nickel for every game console was neglected in my gaming history, I'd have like 4 or 5 nickels, which is a lot of nickels. I'm sure we can all agree, but still, I've got I've got my blind spots. But Soul Reaver was like really kind of wild because you were this vampire, not in the sense of being like undead. Well, yes, you were, but like vampires weren't so much undead. They were just sort of like mutants or predators, if you will. But the main character, Raziel, winds up like being killed and being brought back as this sort of undead revenant. So you are like an actual undead vampire and, you know, feeding off of essence in order to get your revenge on the one who killed you, which was Cain. But anyway, fantastic series, switching between sort of material and ethereal realms, 3D platforming, which of course, you know, it's early PS1, so, you know, a little bit hit and miss sometimes.
Was it rough? Was the platforming rough?
I wouldn't say it's rough, but, you know, it had its moments, is what I'll say. But of all the games in the series, I think Soul Reaver is definitely the best of them all. Anyway, those are just some really fantastic games that have either meant something to me in the case of Soul Reaver, because, okay, first email address I ever put together was totally a reference to Soul Reaver, and that's all I will say on the matter. It left its mark upon me and upon my early internet history, and that is just a little bit of video game and Mac history for you today.
Fantastic. Well, today we're bringing back an old segment called Topic of the Week. Now, the past few weeks we've done Indie Game of the Week, and that has not gone away. We still have a lot of indie games to play, but we want to make sure that we're giving them our due diligence. And so while we're getting through some of those games, this week we have a super important topic to talk about. And full disclosure, this one was interesting enough. I wanted to get Mac's deep thoughts, so I sent him the article in advance. What a crazy thought, Mac. Us doing stuff in advance of the show, right?
Yeah, crazy.
Well, this is from IGN.com by Logan Plant. The new GTA5 mod promising a living AI-powered story, even as the ethics debate heats up. This is interesting. Artificial intelligence recently infiltrated the world of Rockstar's Grand Theft Auto 5 thanks to a new mod. The mod is called Sentient Streets, and it lets players interact with over 30 AI-powered NPCs across the mission. Each character has a unique voice from AI text-to-speech and voice cloning website 11 Labs. The mod is designed for players to have open-ended voiced conversations with cult members, police officers, and civilians. Sentient Streets was built by veteran modder Block using the in-world character engine, which includes features like assigning goals, actions, relationships, and voices to AI-powered NPCs. So, Mac, he demonstrated this on YouTube. Apparently, there's ethical debates around it. I'm super interested to hear your thoughts. And let's take GTA 5 out of the equation, but just video games in general, where there are mods that allow you to play the game, talk with NPCs, and AI will generate the text, will generate the voice. What do you think about this for the future of gaming, and do you see any ethical issues?
Yeah, I do think there are some ethical issues, but, you know, we'll come back to that. As for what I've seen with respect to games, we have tried some of the AI stuff as a result of doing this show. A good example is for quite some time, we've been using AI-generated background music to put with the podcast as it goes to your ears, primarily because AI-generated content cannot be copyrighted and cannot be claimed by anybody.
Correct.
So that puts us in this sort of safe thing where we don't need beautiful scoring to our show. We just need a little ditty in the background, and so that's
although
good enough.
To be clear, like we want to be clear, like our intro music is actually made and we paid for that. Sleeping with Spiders.
But the rest of the music, definitely that. Also, in an episode that we recorded that for technical difficulties never actually wound up getting done, our Nerdflex stuff was questions whereas AI generated. There was a bit of a theme that particular episode. And among other things, the AI could not seem to put together cogent multiple choice gaming related questions, which led to some amusement. All that is to say that my experience so far with AI generated content is coloring my own opinions of what can be done. And I want to put that out there and say that so far, my experience has not led me to believe that AI generated content is good for anything other than background filler. And if that's what you need, it seems to do fine for it.
Okay, so just to give one example, and I think we might have talked about this, and I have not listened to this song, so I don't know, but I believe that it was Drake.
Drake and The Weeknd.
Yeah, it was Drake and The Weeknd. Yeah, good memory. We did talk about it. And they it was real enough that they, I believe, sued to get it taken down.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's an example of AI, and when I say successfully, I'm putting it in quotes because ethically it may not be right, but successfully serving the purpose that it was intended to serve, which was to take those voices, deep fake people into believing it's Drake and putting together some music. But Mac, quality aside, what do you think about the idea of AI from an efficiency standpoint? Now, Galvatron in the chat is saying this is just the beginning. AI will be used not only to replace voice actors in games, but also script writers who write the NPC dialogue. From an efficiency standpoint, if people could successfully use AI to speed up game development, what are your thoughts on that? And I want to go back to that quote from Jason Schreier real quick, where he said something to the effect of, if a game was started today, it would not release for the current gen of consoles. It would release for next gen just because game development's so long. So from efficiency, what do you think about the benefits of AI?
So the benefits, I think, do come down to, again, sort of background filler stuff very good for. What we have so far that we're calling AI doesn't understand story. It technically doesn't understand anything because it's not actually artificially intelligent. We just, it's just doing a pretty reasonable job of approximating things that sound good and sound like stuff. But, if you ask it to focus on something like process, anything that requires process, the creation of like a storyline, the creation of a quest line, things like that, it seems unable to do so. And if you hold down, say, a conversation with one of these AI things and then ask it to summarize your previous conversation up to that point, it struggles to do it because it doesn't understand what's going on. Something fundamental to video games is the expression of the idea, the art of crafting a story doesn't seem to be within the wheelhouse of the stuff that we're calling AI. So I think it can be very useful for generating an interesting idea, perhaps, coming up with something interesting from a word salad, or even for doing filler in the background. But I think it's wrong-headed to try and put on it the heavy lifting of video games, which is those things that we play, the stories that we tell, and the, emotional impact that those things bring along with it. I don't think people won't try, but I think that ultimately they're looking in the wrong place for efficiencies, and they'll probably spend more time trying to clean up the stuff that their AI counterparts are generating than just sitting back and letting it happen, if that makes sense. But maybe I'm a little bit too, doomsday about it all.
No, I understand what you're saying, and I like the comments we're seeing in the chat too. Here's the thing. When I think of, and I hate to use The Last of Us as an example because it's the example that's always used, right? Ashley Johnson is Ellie. And I don't want a robot to take away from, a real life figure who makes cool stuff that I look up to, strictly from a professional standpoint. I don't know her, but I really like, the stuff she's done with Critical Role. She had a cameo in the Avengers. Like, I followed her career, and I really like the stuff she does. So it's dope that she then gets to voice one of my favorite video game characters. And candidly, I think that for a new IP, it probably helps to sell copies. If it's made by Naughty Dog, but also, hey, guess who's voicing the main characters? It's Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson, like two people who are renowned for their work, right? However, I think that if there are aspects of game development that are strictly busy work that could be completed, and I don't want to belittle anyone's role, but completed by an entry-level programmer. And let's say we could, cut out the entry-level programmer, have AI do it to speed things up. Now, some might say, yeah, but Lom, then that entry-level programmer never gets to be a better programmer, and we don't get the elite stuff that person could potentially create. I get that argument. I just think it'd be cool if we could get games faster and not cut out the beautiful artistic pieces of them, the story, the voice acting, but cut out some of the troubleshooting, maybe cut out some of the busy work. I think that'd be great. And so I think AI has a place.
Yeah, I'm not too read into what's going on with the current writers' strike. But as I understand it, AI, cutting writers out for AI or cutting voice actors out for AI is something that I know is a big sticking point for the Screen Actors Guild. And I don't know where the video game writers come down on that, or which particular group they are represented by. I will say, on the subject of AI writing code, I don't know how good it is at writing code. I've actually heard both ways of AI being very good at it and AI being atrocious at it. But all I can tell is that I think it would be great to be able to free up more resources, give smaller studios a shot at making big AAA productions, because they don't have to invest so heavily in things that they just don't have the budgets for. So, yeah, I mean, I think that'd be great, but I think we're kind of dancing around the ethical part of the things,
which is that it could be taking jobs from good people. Sure.
Oh, well, I was actually thinking specifically about, in this article, they mentioned about the AI text-to-speech and voice cloning website, 11 Labs.
Yeah.
And I think particularly on the voice cloning side is something that I think is definitely unethical. Mr. Nice Guy, your voice and the ability for you to control what it is that your voice, or the simulacrum of your voice, things, any minute now, we'll have Mr. Nice Guy being, shilling products like the Manscaped and the Lawnmower 2.0 as the AI does its thing. No disrespect meant to those folks, fine folks. But I just know it's something that Mr. Nice Guy would not be peddling of his own accord.
You're getting a peek behind the curtain, y'all. We're not saying that any of these companies have ever reached out to us before. Mac is just picking companies at random. We'll leave it at that.
But all that is to say that that's definitely a situation of deep ethical concern, and I do know that is something that people worry about.
We've gone way over because this is such an awesome topic. I will say I hate the idea of people's jobs being replaced by but once upon a time, I bet there were people pre-podcast having the same conversation about robots putting electronics together.
Oh, for sure.
And now that's just something we accept. As time goes on, technology takes over more and more. But you're right, video games are art, and I would really like to see that continue. I would like to see some of the drudgery potentially be replaced by AI, but not at the expense of art. Mac, anything you want to say to wrap up?
We should use it in the ways that it helps, and we should not use it in the ways that doesn't, and that just sounds like a ridiculously tall order for anybody, much less people who are hunting for that green. So, Yeah.
Cool. That's been topic of the week.
Well, now we take a look at a crowdfunding project that's trying to get off the ground. We call this Kick or Kickstart, and this is actually a round 2 of Kickstarter. So let me just go ahead and drop a link in the chat. Some of you might find this a little bit familiar, so we'll move a touch quickly. We talked about this back in 275 exactly. This is a project called AutoForge, and it is basically meant to be a Terraria or Minecraft-like, but throw in a lot more machines. It does remind me often of some of those automated mods for Minecraft. But it had been a $25,000 goal with $20 per copy before, and now it's a $5K goal, and the buy-in is $12/$15. Now, I'm not saying that LOM influenced the price point at this relaunch, but we do know, because Jason did thank us for talking about it on the pod, we do know that he heard us. And I do know, Mr. Nice Guy, that you had expressed that $20 a copy was a bit of a steep price. Now, they're still going for delivery of early quarter two of next year. It does have a playable demo, and it is put front and center. Mr. Nice Guy, touching base back with you. $15 a copy. More your speed now, or still reservations?
Well, here's the thing I really like about this. First of all, shout out to Jason. Not that we know everything about how to run a Kickstarter, but we have seen a lot of them, and we kind of know, to a certain extent, like what works and what doesn't. We also play a lot of games and know pricing. So, yeah, $15, absolutely more my speed. And here's the other thing that I like that he did. He listed the discount that people are getting when they pledge at a certain price. So there's actually a super early bird price here for $12. And it says, hey, you're getting it for 40% off, which really encourages people like, hey, if you're interested, you're paying $12. And yes, it is going to be more expensive if you wait till launch. So kill two birds with one stone, help the game get made, and also go in knowing that you are getting a discount. I like this pricing model.
Obviously, we wish everybody the best of luck in these. But for my part, I have a soft spot for platformers. I have a soft spot for crafting games, and I have a soft spot for automation. So all things, this is just really checking all of the boxes. And of course, with that lowered price, even more so. Now, I've only put maybe about an hour or so into the demo, so I don't know for sure just how much more there is to do on the way for delivery in quarter two of next year. But from what I have played, it does feel as though the basics and a lot of the side stuff is there and ready to go already. So I feel cautiously optimistic that this might be one of the few Kickstarters that we actually see release close to the date that they expect to. Now, one of the things that I know nothing about from the Kickstarter is what the end game is going to look like. There's a lot of mobs and a lot of sort of automation that you can put together for this, for defending your base and the like. But, bosses? I really don't know how that's going to play out, at least not yet.
Is this one, I know with Terraria you can play with friends. Is this multiplayer or co-op? Do you know?
As far as I'm aware, this is a single-player experience. I don't believe that multiplayer is a thing on here, and I don't believe it's listed as a stretch goal or anything of the like. I will mention, though, that as we've talked about this, it has ticked over the goal. So it does look like a successful Kickstarter at this point. And one of the things that, you said it best, Mr. Nice Guy, we've seen a lot of Kickstarters. And I think one of the reasons for this lowered upfront goal is that it's very often easier to keep your momentum going if you've successfully been funded. People feel more willing to hop in. And I think Jason learned some great lessons from the first go show and has really improved the presentation here for this second one.
Yeah, another thing, and I don't know if this is his plan. I've seen some Kickstarters where they say, all right, we need $10,000, and they know they need 15. But they also know that in the time that it takes them to run through that 10, maybe they can raise another 5 through other means. I've seen some people do post-Kickstarter PayPals or Venmos, or hey, you can still buy it, and it's the Kickstarter's done, but you can still buy the game. Give us $15, we'll get you on the Kickstarter list. Which some may say that's unethical. I think it's smart, and I don't know if that's what he's planning on doing. But I really like that he's improved this from last time we looked at it, and I think the game looks like a lot of fun. To be honest with you, it looks great.
Yeah. Well, now I say kickstart. How about you?
I say kickstart too. I hope that this gets made. I'd love to play this on Steam Deck. It looks awesome.
Thank you very much for your kicks or kickstarts in the chat. We much appreciate it. But that has been Kick or Kickstart, and now it's time for some trivia, eh?
That's right. It's time for Nerd Flex.
Oh, woo-hoo.
Before we dive in, gotta say shout out to the homie Spenis the Menace, recently married. He has not been here in a while. He's here today. It's good to see you, Spenis. Thanks for joining us, and everyone else. Well, this is a segment where you, the viewers, try to stump the hosts. Sometimes you do, and sometimes you do not. If you're here live, you have a job to do. Get a multiple choice gaming-related question in the chat. Mac and I will use nothing but our noggins to try to answer. Question number 1, Mac, in the chat from Ishmobile. Mac, would you do the honor?
Certainly. Ishmobile asks, in Detroit Become Human, what visual indicator shows when an android is angry? A, a red light on their temple. B, their eyes glow yellow. C, flushing of the cheeks and the forehead. D, their mandatory name badge, which is worn on their shirt pocket, flashes a warning. Now, I've never played Detroit Become Human, but because I do have an interest in cosplay and things like that, I seem to recall a cosplay manufacturer, selling these like little colored discs for you to stick on the side of your temple. And so just because I know that is a thing for this, I'm inclined to go A and say that it's related to the temple. But that's just Mr. Nice Guy. Do you have more ideas?
I have played. It's been a long time. So I'm going to defer to you. I would have guessed the eyes.
All right, let's see how we do. A, the circle on the temple shows their state, including blue for calmness, yellow for anxiety, and red for anger or sorrow. I would have thought it would have been blue for sorrow, but hey, I'm not an android maker.
You just play one on a podcast. Well, if anyone else has questions, feel free to get them in the chat.
Yes, Spenis, we need a Pokemon question. Come on, and he delivers. All right, looks like we've got this.
In Pokemon Gold and Silver, the Johto and Kanto regions are next to each other. How many ways can you go from one region to the other? 2, 3, 4, or 5?
I'm inclined to say 2, because I only remember 1, and I feel like you took like a train or a tram to go between the 2 regions. And so 2 seems reasonable, because if I can remember 1, there's probably 1 I'm forgetting. I would be surprised if there was 2 that I was forgetting. But, Mr. Nice Guy, what say you?
Yeah, I feel like 2 is the obvious answer, and so I'm inclined to say 3, actually.
I am not confident in this, so I'll go with you. Let's do 3 final answer, and that way if we're wrong, we're both wrong, but we're wrong as a team.
We're wrong as a team.
The answer is 3. Crossing from Johto to Kanto through the Tojo Falls, crossing Victory Row in the Indigo Plateau, and the Magnet Train from Goldenrod to Saffron, and the SS Aqua from Olivine to Vermilion. Oh, okay, I see. Yeah.
Hey, we did it.
Not too shabby. We did it. When Mr. Nice Guy, it's all because of you, because I did, in fact, completely forget 2 whole methods.
No worries. And hey, Galvatron, we love you, buddy. But multiple choice question, you just gave us 25 possible answers. What do you think, Matt? Can we skip that one?
I think we can skip that one. Sorry, Galvatron. Next time, I'd say let's top out at 6 answers on a multiple choice question.
Why don't you go for the last one?
All right. In Deep Rock Galactic, what is the name of your robot ally in solo missions? Is it A, Bosco, B, Twin Leaks, C, Hector, or D, Molly? No idea. Never played Deep Rock Galactic.
I'm like 90% sure it's Molly.
All right.
It's a little robot.
Final answer. Let's go,
goes
Molly.
Around with you, and yep, it's Molly for sure. No.
Oh, A, Bosco. Although Molly is another robot in the game, it's used as a mule, not as an ally.
That's a trick question. Y'all did me dirty with that question.
Well,
no, that's...
Hey, we still went 2 for 3, which is not too shabby, especially with the awesome questions you all bring every week. Thank you.
Not too shabby at all. Yep. That's been Nerdflex.
Well, now we turn to a little bit of legalese. I am not a lawyer. I just play one here on a podcast, and we are running up against time, so I'm going to be quick about this one for a variety of reasons. I wanted to tell you about Wata Story, Mark, specifically about Wata games. So I mentioned that in 2021, this week, we saw Super Mario Brothers 1 sell for $2 million at auction. That same game, and it might even have been the exact same box, gonna have to double check that, was sold for $100,000 at auction in 2019. The same one selling for a mere $30,000 mint in box in 2017. As a result, this led to some hubbub about maybe was Wata in their buddy-buddy connection with Heritage Auctions? Were they doing things, shady things, to inflate game prices? And there was, of course, a lawsuit filed as a result of that. Night v. Wata Games is the name on said lawsuit. And we've kind of touched on this briefly, sort of a side, conversation in 194. That's when Mr. Nice Guy was sort of talking about his getting back into game collecting, and Wata came up as a result of that. In episode 210 and in 226, we talked a little bit about this Wata lawsuit. Now, around the middle of last year, Wata successfully argued that the venue that this lawsuit was going on should be moved from California to Colorado, where Wata is incorporated. This led to a change in the designation of the case, the case number. And then late last year, a hearing was held, and a deadline on discovery became September of this year. So we're due to see discovery next month. Or, well, for discovery to be completed and for us to eventually see some things on that. And then earlier this year, a new judge was assigned to the case, changing the call number once again. So all that is for me to say that I had thought for the past year and change that, literally nothing had happened on this case, because I keep looking for these case numbers that just keep changing because they change venue, case number changes, change judge, case number changes. But I'm finally back onto it. 22-CV-01873-GPG-KLM for those of you, my law stands at home. But thanks to this whole big rabbit hole, something like 30 minutes or so before we were ready to record, I finally got my hands on what is the second amended complaint of Night v. Wata. And I want to put this out there as hey, in the very near future, I'm going to have a good summary of where we stand with respect to Night v. Wata Games, and in September we're going to get discovery, which means we will now have some evidence to look at and to be like, hey, look, here are the pins on our conspiracy board that connect, Wata to Heritage Auctions, and here is the evidence that they have for this, that, and the other. Maybe even here are the emails of them talking about their nefarious plot for overpricing video games. But that will have to wait for a future legalese and a future episode of the show. But it's coming. It's coming, Mr. Nice Guy.
I got it. I'm excited for it, too. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate y'all. And if you're listening because you're thinking about voting us for the podcast awards, thank you for tuning in, and we'd appreciate your vote humbly. That'd be great. Mac, before we go, we have one last segment called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing, where we talk about just that, the cool, nerdy stuff we've been into. I don't know why I said that with such enthusiasm. Across Xbox, PlayStation, mobile, retro gaming devices, and the stuff we've been watching on streaming platforms and physical media. If you're here live, let us know what you have been into in the chat. We're always looking for new stuff. Mac, what have you done the past couple weeks or past week?
So I've played a little bit of a game called Vernal Edge. I'm sure we'll talk about that more in the near future. I've also been watching some cooking YouTube videos. I find them to be particularly relaxing at the end of the day. But also, we at this house are watching Star Trek Strange New Worlds. For a while there, we were watching Lower Decks, having a great time of that. Now it's Strange New Worlds, and I think especially the first couple of episodes, I felt like nobody talks like that. With respect to like some of the dialogue. But I feel like they're really kind of coming into their own and getting better. And I'm only about 6 episodes in out of the first season of, I guess, 20 episodes. So I'm cautiously optimistic that this is going to be a good ride of new Star Trek.
So you said you're 6 episodes in out of 20 episodes?
Yep, in the first season, yeah.
How many seasons are there?
It is currently doing its 2nd season. And I have heard that there is a musical episode in season 2 of Strange New Worlds, and I've heard that it is I've heard that it is a paragon of musical episodes in television, which I'm pretty excited about because there are some good musical episodes.
Remember that show you got me into? I only watched 1 or 2 episodes. I think it was called Gallivant.
Yes, Gallivant. Way back in days of old, there was a legend told about a hero known as Gallivant.
It was brilliant. It was really funny and really well written. Great show. Well, cool. As far as what I have been watching and playing, Mac, I got into Fallout 76. And for years, I've been searching for a game I could get into, MMORPG, that would just suck me in. And I don't want to say anything prematurely, because I've played, a few hours of it. But I'm having a lot of fun with it. As a Fallout fan, it's nice to run around in that universe. And, just do the Fallout thing. And I'm having a lot of fun with it, playing with randoms. So I've been doing that. I have also been playing Vernal Edge. We will talk about that in a couple weeks at some point. Maybe even next week. We'll see where we're at. And I'll leave it at that. I've been doing a lot of Black Ops Cold War. Zombies with my friend. That was the PS Plus title last month. And I was telling everybody, like, yo, you got to get this game. It's my comfort food of games, and it's free if you have PlayStation. So a lot of friends picked it up. Been playing that. As far as watching, a lot of YouTube. Mac, I one of my things right now is watching videos of people modding their Steam Deck. Like, I love my deck. There's nothing wrong with it. I want to get colored buttons. When the deck HD comes out, after I allow some other people to test it, I want to upgrade the screen. I kind of want to do that shell swap. There's just so much cool stuff you can do with your Steam Deck. So lots of YouTube videos about that. Nerd Nest, one of my favorites. Your Player 2, Game Chasers for retro gaming, several others.
Oh, just one last thing for me to plug for myself, and that is been playing some tabletop RPGs, some GURPS with old friends from back in Utah, and some D&D with old friends back in Nebraska. The internet is truly a glorious place, and that's been fun and exciting. All right, so let's see. What are people into? Ishmael's been watching The Simpsons and Ted Lasso and been playing Project Zomboid. Spennis the Menace is playing Dungeons and Dragons at a friend's house. Woohoo!
Love it.
As well as some Magic the Gathering at a card shop. Let's see what else. Seems like most folk are a little bit quiet on what they've been watching and playing. But I think that's just because we came with such good stuff. Nobody's got anything to follow that.
We did.
Yeah.
Well, Mac, why don't you take us home, buddy?
Absolutely. Thank you for coming out and being a part of the show, whether you were here live, telling us about the things you were into, slinging that trivia at us, or giving us the feedback on us being wild and crazy about the AI ethics and games. But we appreciate you here, and we appreciate you who are listening after the fact as well. Join us for the live recording, twitch.tv/2nerds in a pod. That's with the number 2, 9 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Pacific, most every Tuesday. To remember, until we see you next week, be excellent to each other and keep it nerdy. Bye.
Deuces.